Welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because you want to get smart fast. We take stacks of information and really boil them down to what you need.
And today we're jumping into something called Undercover Sex Signals, based on this, well, fascinating guide.
Right. And, the title might sound a bit specific, maybe just about dating.
It does, but actually our deep dive today is broader. It's really about understanding those subtle cues, the nonverbal stuff people use to show interest.
Exactly. It's more about sharpening your antenna for human interaction generally, whatever your situation.
hmm Whether you're single, partnered up, or just curious about how people connect, decoding these undercover sex signals, or USSs, as the guide calls them, can be, well, pretty eye-opening.
The author behind this guide, they apparently spent years, decades even, just watching people watching as a serious study.
Yeah, trying to figure out the unspoken language of attraction. And what's really interesting is how it connects to Dr. Timothy Popper's research.
Well, right, Dr. Perper.
Hmm.
He spent, what was it, a huge amount of time observing people.
An incredible amount. The guide mentions 9,000 hours just watching how men and women interact in singles bars.
9,000, wow. And he was jotting notes down on cocktail napkins, is that right?
That's the story. Cocktail napkins, it shows you the kind of, in-the-moment observation he was doing. Real dedication.
Definitely. So our mission today, for you listening, is to pull out the key stuff from this guide and from Perper's findings, too.
We'll look at what these USSs actually are, maybe why they exist,
Yeah.
Societal stuff, maybe even evolutionary angles.
And we'll give some concrete examples. The goal is those aha moments, right? Without getting totally lost in the weeds.
Exactly. Insight without the overwhelm.
Okay, so first things first. Why should people actually care about these USSs? Does it matter?
Well, the guide throws out a pretty startling number. It claims something like 30 out of 31 men just completely miss these signals.
The 30 out of 31. Wow, okay, that's almost everyone.
It's a huge percentage. And it
Good.
highlights that women often signal interest very subtly. It's not always overt.
Right. The guide has that quote, doesn't it? Something like, don't expect the beauty at the bar to just...
Beckon you by crooking her finger and winking at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It paints a picture that it's usually much less obvious than that.
Much more nuanced. And the consequence, if you miss these signals, the guide puts it pretty bluntly.
It says, she fishes for smarter tuna.
Ouch. Okay. But it makes the point these signals are, well, potentially important if you're looking for a connection.
Definitely. And think about it. Maybe you've been in a situation, talking to someone, and afterwards you're just confused. Were they interested? Just friendly?
Yeah, totally. That feeling of ambiguity.
Understanding these USSs could offer some clarity there. Looking back or even going forward in social settings, it might help decode things a bit.
So where do they come from? What's the origin story for these signals? Why are they so subtle?
The guide suggests a few things. One idea is that women are often, maybe through societal conditioning, better at reading nonverbal cues. Well, it quotes something like, little girls are trained to use their wiles to get what they want. Maybe a bit dated language, but the idea is an early focus on social dynamics.
Okay, so learned behavior.
Potentially. Plus, maybe some evolutionary reasons, too. Things linked to, say, nurturing instincts or the need for really early nonverbal communication between mothers and babies.
Interesting. Both nurture and nature playing a role.
It seems plausible. The guide also talks about how girls bond in childhood. Apparently, there's a lot of detailed analysis of, well, boys' behavior.
Oh, right. Dissecting conversations, body language, all that stuff.
Exactly. Going over every little detail with friends. That kind of constant practice, it sharpens your skills in both sending and receiving subtle messages.
Which is probably quite different from how young boys typically bond.
The guide makes a bit of a joke about it, contrasting it with tying cats' tails together. Obviously an exaggeration, but...
But it highlights a difference in focus, perhaps. Less on dissecting emotional nuances.
Possibly. Less explicit focus on interpreting interpersonal signals in that way. So for the listener, recognizing this potential difference in upbringing might explain why these USSs don't always feel intuitive to pick up on.
Makes sense. Okay, let's get into some specifics. The guide mentions one called the shy geisha. What does that look like?
Right, the shy geisha. It's a sequence. It starts with eye contact. She looks at you, maybe smiles, gives a little nod.
Okay, standard enough so far.
But then the key part. She looks down and away. Downward is important here. The guide stresses that this often means interest, not rejection.
Interesting. So looking down isn't necessarily, I'm not interested.
Not in this context, apparently. And then Drawing on Dr. Perper's work,
Yeah.
if she looks back up at you again within roughly 45 seconds, that's seen as a strong confirmation of interest.
45 seconds. Okay, that's a specific window. So you see this. Eye contact, smile, nod, look down.
Yeah.
What's the recommended play?
The advice is basically, hold a friendly gaze yourself, maybe offer another smile when she looks back up, and then, yeah, approach respectfully. Acknowledge the signal without being, overly aggressive.
And what about that whole playing hard to get thing? Does the guide mention that?
It does touch on it. It acknowledges that, yes, some women might intentionally seem a bit aloof, even if they are interested.
So how does that fit with the shy geisha?
Well, if you've clearly seen that specific sequence, the gaze, smile, nod, look down, then the look back up the guide suggests you can be more confident that any later coyness might be part of that dynamic rather than just outright disinterest.
Gotcha. Okay, was another one. The primp.
Ah, yes, the primp. This is about those little adjustments someone might make to their appearance.
Like fixing hair, checking lipstick.
Exactly. Smoothing clothes, adjusting something, subtle stuff.
And the meaning is?
Pretty straightforward, actually. It suggests she wants to be noticed, wants to look her best, potentially for you. It's a sign of self-awareness directed your way.
Like a little nonverbal, hey, notice me, I'm making an effort.
Precisely. And it can happen across a room, kind of like bait, or even during a date if she, say, steps away for a moment and comes back having done a little touch-up. Signals ongoing effort.
Makes sense. Okay, eye contact. The guide has a catchy name for this one. Taffy eyes.
Taffy eyes, yeah. It sounds a bit strange, but it describes a particular kind of intense eye contact.
More than just looking at someone.
Yes. It references studies suggesting mutual gaze itself can actually increase feelings of romantic love.
Wow, okay, so how does the taffy part work?
The idea is you look deeply into someone's eyes, really hold the gaze, and then when you eventually break contact, you do it slowly, reluctantly.
Like stretching taffy.
Exactly, as if it takes effort to pull your gaze away. The guide links this to cognitive consistency and even brain chemistry, like PEA, phenylethylamine.
PEA, the love chemical.
That's the one. The idea is that the physical sensation, that intense connection from the eyes, can actually trigger the feeling, the emotion. Your brain tries to make sense of the intense physical cue.
Fascinating. But I bet there's a big but coming.
Oh, absolutely. A crucial caveat. This only works, the guide stresses, if there's already some initial spark, some baseline attraction.
Right, if they're not interested at all.
Then it's just going to come across as creepy or intimidating. Context is everything.
Definitely need that initial green light, however faint. Okay, what else? Body positioning, mimicry.
Yeah, quickly on those. Leaning in, pretty classic sign of engagement, wanting to be closer, fairly obvious usually. Then there's the copycat, mirroring. Someone starts to subtly copy your posture, maybe your gestures, even speech rhythm.
That means
It's seen as a subconscious sign of rapport, being on the same wavelength, building connection. You tend to mirror people you feel connected to.
so we've got these individual signals, shy geisha, primp, taffy eyes, copycat.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't just latch onto one, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. The guide really emphasizes looking for clusters of signals. Multiple signs pointing in the same direction give you a much stronger, more reliable indication.
One signal could be anything, but two or three together. That's more telling.
Much more telling. And your response should kind of match the overall vibe, too.
Match the intensity, you mean?
Yeah. If the signals are subtle, your approach probably should be too. Don't go from 0 to 60 just because you saw someone adjust their hair.
Oh, good point. And, of course, people are different. Not everyone signals the same way.
Absolutely crucial reminder. These are patterns, tendencies observed by the author and researchers like Perper, but individuals vary. You have to read the specific person, the specific situation.
The guide also mentions this idea of an audition. What's that about?
It's the idea that, especially early on when you first meet, the other person might be kind of, well, subconsciously evaluating you.
Like sizing you up as potential partner material.
Something like that. Checking out your vibe, how you handle yourself, your conversation, your manners. It's not usually conscious, but it's happening.
So beyond just reading signals, making a good overall impression matters.
Hugely. The guide mentions the basics, which shouldn't be overlooked. Things like, appearance, clean, clothes that fit well, basic stuff.
Good manners. Being a good listener.
All fundamental. They create the baseline impression before signals even really come into play.
There was also that phrase, running yourself up the flagpole. What does that mean?
Ah, yeah. It's a metaphor for putting yourself out there socially and seeing who responds positively, who salutes, so to speak.
Okay, so testing the waters in different environments.
Exactly. The guide uses an example, this guy Harddeep, who found he got very different reactions depending on the social scene he was in. Some places he clicked, others not so much.
So it's about finding where you fit, where your personality resonates,
Precisely. Which leads to this interesting shift in perspective the guide suggests.
which is,
Instead of always asking who most turns me on, try asking who am I most turning on?
huh, interesting flip. Focus on where the positive reception already is.
Yeah. Where do you seem to naturally get positive feedback? Which types of people or environment seem to vibe well with you? It's about recognizing your own social market in a way.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap this up, what's the big takeaway from digging into these undercover sex signals?
I think the main thing is just awareness. Becoming more conscious of this whole layer of subtle, nonverbal communication that's often happening right under our noses.
It can really change how you understand social interactions potentially.
Definitely. And it can help you maybe spot potential interest you might have otherwise missed.
And we should stress again, like the guy does, this isn't about becoming some kind of manipulator.
Not at all. It's presented as being about better communication, understanding the signals that might already be out there, and maybe being clearer, or at least more aware, in your own communication too.
Improving your social intelligence, really.
That's a good way to put it. Cultivating sensitivity to the nuances.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Mhm.
Now that you've heard about these signals, the shy geisha, the primp, the look down, the mirroring,
Yeah.
how might you think about past interactions differently?
Yeah, or how might you observe things differently next time you're out, or even just talking to your partner? It's definitely food for thought.
Gives you a new lens, perhaps.
Indeed. And really, we've only scratched the surface here. Nonverbal communication, attraction. It's a huge, fascinating area. Lots more to explore.